Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and it's my pleasure to welcome you at Ukraine Media Center. Today we have gathered here to discuss an important topic. Today we'll be talking about the support of development of distributed power generation for Ukrainian municipalities. And today we will see the signing of the relevant memorandum. So let me remind the context a little bit. On the 18th of July 2024, the government approved the strategy for distributed generation until the year 2035. So we realized that the centralized generation that used to exist previously didn't prove itself efficient from the security perspective. Efficient during the full-scale invasion, we see that the aggressor continues inflicting massive strikes on our power grid and our energy system. So today we will be talking about the development of another type of generation, and today the energy company Ukraine and a number of associations is about to discuss the steps that will support implementation of distributed power generation in the Ukrainian community. So let me introduce our speakers. Joining us today are Oleksandr Svetelyk, president of the CIGRE-Ukraine Association. Also joining us is Vitaly Butenko, CEO of JSC Energy Company of Ukraine. Also joining us is Yurii Fomichev, mayor of Slavutych, Vybranovskyi, co-founder of the Ukraine Facility Platform. And also joining us online will be Igor Timoshenko, Deputy Chair of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. And I hope that Mr. Pavlo Kozyrev has joined us already, who is the chairman of the Association of Small Towns of Ukraine. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. So, Mr. Oleksandr, the floor is yours. The microphone, please. And let's talk about the distributed generation, why the implementation of such a project is important, why is it supposed to start with the communities. Thank you very much. So first of all, Olga, I would like to say that what you've mentioned in your press release, our energy sector, the way it used to exist before the full-scale invasion, it was not efficient. It was vulnerable. Well, it used to be efficient, but that is a part of the vulnerability, because among the global power grids, ours one was one of the most resilient, but having this crazy neighbor by our side, well, we have what we got. So now our task is to redistribute the generation, to implement small dispatch points at the distribution stations. So that was the key message. It can be done because we're saying that those are our communities, our municipalities. Should they be interested, and they are interested in this kind of work, and this work is supposed to be done upon their request. They are the beneficiaries of this program. We realize that the communities have a limited number of qualified specialists. I'll put it in such a cautious terms. When it comes to distributed generation, it raises a lot of questions, even among the specialists. They may have different opinions. We were discussing it with my colleague recently. He has his opinion. Our CIGRE specialists, well, yesterday we had a general meeting of CIGRE, and our specialists, they all have different opinions. That's why we need projects, common projects. And today we're getting many generation plants from our European colleagues. They are in place, but they're not operating because they cannot work with our power grid. We need the project to install them. We need to have the networks re-equipped, those networks that supply electric power to our municipalities and communities. So there's a lot of technical nuances, and all those technical nuances are supposed to be described in the projects. the projects that would allow to reconfigure those networks, then there's a lot of economic questions. Those generation plants are supposed to have their economy, and they are supposed to be able to operate in any mode as a part of the power grid, and in case of loss of power supply from the mainway grid, they are supposed to be able to work autonomously. So those modes are supposed to be justified with the relevant feasibility calculations. That's why we've come up with the project that I would like to focus your attention on this word. We offer services. If a community needs help in implementation of a project like this, we're here for them. CIGRE may cover technical issues, feasibility study, commissioning. Vitaly will tell you more about the economic side. We should make this distributed generation efficient. It's supposed to work with profit. That's one of the key nuances. So again, we're offering services, and if the communities need help, we're here to help them. Are we understanding it correctly, that the technical aspect of support is taken into account too, and the communities get technical support as well within the project? Yes, we see this project comprehensively. Economic sides, technical aspects, everything. During our Congress in the International Exhibition Center, we recently had a good presentation. Vitaly did it actually, and we promised to everybody that we're about to establish the project office of our three organizations. That's why today we're planning to sign the memorandum, and it will be our project office that will provide services to the communities. Thank you very much, Mr. Oleksandr, Mr. Vitaly. We understand that one way or another, everybody keeps talking about decentralization, so we need to integrate the divided generation into the existing power grids. So recently, the energy company announced about the establishment of the operator of divided distributed generation. So how is it going to work? Thank you very much for the invitation. Let me take 2 steps back to explain you how our organization ended up in this project. So the government adopted the strategy to proceed from concentrated generation to divided generation. So that was a response to the challenges of time. That's not a fashion. That's just something that can ensure energy security for the country today, tomorrow, and for the years to come. So the strategic decision was made, and as a professionals who work in the energy market, we've decided to take a look and to check out how can it be implemented, and we were going to find out the so-called points of pain, and we found out that for the time being, the project is the process itself is kind of complicated. A lot of steps were already made by the regulator, by the ministry to facilitate the procedures. And those people who were working with those procedures previously, they can evaluate the effect of such facilitation. But those who only just start working, they see even the facilitated procedures as a problem. So as we've checked the whole chain, we've realized that, look, for the time being, the beneficiaries, and we're focusing on the communities, they are in demand for this product, but they're lacking experience, because we're talking about a lot of communities. Maybe there is more expertise in one community, in another one it could be less, but the effect of distributed generation, it should be in place at the level of the system and at the level of the community. And those are those complicated aspects that where our expertise may help. Then we've just sat with Mr. Oleksandr and started brainstorming. And we've asked ourselves, how can we provide or offer a solution to the market with a focus on the communities, a solution that could help us implement the strategy of development of distributed generation within the terms that would be reasonable from the current perspective. So that was the first impulse, so to say. From the perspective of a type of generation, what's going on here is the change of paradigm. If traditionally the big generation plants are being built that generate the power, and then that power comes to the people. So the distributed generation changes the directions. So we first go to the people, we start building the distributed generation at the level of communities, then we unite all of it and we bring it back to the system as an integral part made of many small parts. And this is how both the communities and the system wins. And under the conditions of distributed generation, it's more difficult to do it. So we started putting together this concept of creation of the operator of distributed generation, because like Mr. Oleksandr has said, there is money like to buy the equipment, there is donor support, there are companies ready to install it. But the question is, what's next? Because the economic stability of the distributed generation should be one of the key and most complicated aspects, because it can only be ensured through operation in the market, through balancing, through a number of different instruments that are currently not aware to all of the market or are not known to all of the market players. So if we will try to build the distributed generation, but in the end it will work without profit, and if it doesn't have profit, it won't be able to operate. So why all those expenses? So this last step of economic stability and efficiency is the key goal, our added value that we want to create at the level of communities, at the level of the system, and at the level of the state in general, because the concept itself, the project, is broken down into three big blocks: regulatory block, technical part, and economic part. In order to make sure that the time from the moment the decision is made is the shortest possible, we support the communities with the regulatory, economic and technical aspects. So this is the foundation of our concept, the concept of establishment of operator of distributed generation that we're trying to implement. But in this area, we need partnership, we need collaboration, we need to bring it all together. We need to bring the specialists together, those specialists who all understand their part, but they all work as an orchestra. Because for the community, what's critical for the community? They need lights, they need power for their critical infrastructure, and they don't need to look for more money to have it, because it's already making money for them. So again, if this solution is given to the community like this, that's a win-win for both parties, community and us. So as we consider the projects, as we talk to the donors, because the donors are asking us, all right, we're giving you money, you buy the generators, what's next? But apart from everything's going to be all right, we need justification, we need reason, and we need to prove that everything can be implemented and it may work. This is exactly the experience that is the key aspect here to make sure that all this concept works. So we're coming to the people. Why the communities? They are the most unprotected. The demand is the biggest there. We think that business sector, commercial sector, they will make it on their own, they'll find a way out. But when it comes to the cities, so that's a whole different thing. We're a government-controlled company, and our mission, if I may, is not only to make money, but to create added value, to help people, so that everybody wins in this situation, both the communities and the state. And this is what stimulated us to apply an efficient approach to this situation, to build a solution in a way like this. It's not a monopoly. It's not mandatory. It's a choice. It's an option. But first we offer it to the communities, like, let us help you solve this problem that is your problem, the problem of the system, the problem of the country, and the problem of the sector. So this is what we're trying to achieve. Well, every single one of the blocks that you've mentioned, I think that there's a lot of challenges everywhere, in technical, in economic part, but when it comes to regulatory part, are we at good starting positions? Well, just like I've mentioned, a lot of work was done by the regulator to facilitate those procedures. And it's really something that opens opportunities, big opportunities for more prompt implementation of these kind of projects if we build the whole process around it. And from my professional perspective, there's a lot of optimism. We're ready, and moreover, we are going to continue building dialogue with the regulator and with the ministry when we enter this process. Like, look, help us to facilitate things here and then here, so it goes smoother. And the beneficiaries will not only be some specific communities, but the whole market. But as we say, there's going to be kind of probing. Like, we'll start and then we'll see. We'll be asking the ministries to make some processes easier, and the distributed generation in the country will grow faster. Thank you very much, Mr. Pavlo. I hope you're seeing and hearing us. So we would like to get you involved in our conversation. We understand the Association of the Small Towns is in close cooperation with all of the communities of Ukraine. You're probably feeling all of those problems existing here. So I would like to ask you to share what is the feedback that you're getting from the communities? What is the level of the support of such initiatives in the communities? Good morning, dear friends. I would like to summarize or maybe even intensify the signal of our partners, Mr. Oleksandr, Mr. Pavlo, Mr. Vitaly. But first of all, I would like to ask you to pardon me for not joining you. Well, really, the Association of the Small Towns of Ukraine is in close cooperation with the communities, just as it's supposed to do, just like every association is supposed to do. But we have a number of tools of support of the community. And one of such tools is the supermarket of solutions for the communities. That's our communications platform. We're starting from the summer this year. We started stimulating the processes of intensification of idea of distributed generation in the communities. The colleagues have mentioned how important it is. They mentioned that it would allow us to ensure the supply of electricity to all of our communities. Well, because we know there's a lot of other services related to the supply of electric power, and it's important for us to efficiently spend time working on those ideas suggested by National Security and Defense Council. 417 communities took part in the meetings in our platform, including about 1,500 residents, the residents of our platform, the employers or the officials of the municipalities. And one of the results of such an intense work is memorandum signed with the National Security and Defense Council and for the cooperation and intensification of cooperation And now that we're talking about memorandum, getting back to today's memorandum that is about to be signed during our meeting, I would like to say that we will definitely interact. There is a huge demand for such kind of service on part of the communities, and we're seeing that the energy company of Ukraine is about administration of existing generation facilities, because in order to ensure their profitable operation, we need to administer the distribution of power to the grid and participation in this market. And that's a top league. Not always the communities have such opportunities and this kind of specialists, and that's why the energy company of Ukraine is an important component of a partnership who helps us administer the existing structures. As Mr. Oleksandr has said, CIGRE is a technical part, support of all of the processes, everything up to the commissioning. So as we launch the generation facility, the project is picked up by the energy company of Ukraine. However, our partnership contemplates that every expert support will be provided during the designing phase and implementation of the project, and the Association of the Small Towns of Ukraine coordinates all of those processes. And here, a supermarket of the solutions for communities, our key platform, is gathering the communities which are motivated to such projects. For example, the mayor of Slavutych is attending the presentation of this project for the second time. And in my opinion, it's a clear signal that the Slavutych community is ready to become, if not first, then a pilot community to ensure such interactions. So we're seeing there's a lot of work ahead. I would like to convince you that my signature will be under this memorandum just as soon as I'm physically able to put it, and I'm ready to answer any questions that may potentially or I'm sure will arise during our discussion. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Pavlo. Mr. Yurii, I'd like to give the floor to you. So you're the mayor. Were there any other distributed generation initiatives that were launched before? What are the lessons learned then, and what are the problems that you're already seeing? Thank you. Thank you very much. Greetings to everybody. Greetings to everybody who is watching us online. And I would like to thank Mr. Oleksandr because I hadn't waited for the microphone to tell you about our energy efficiency. We really demonstrated it to the whole world that our power grid is the coolest. During the shellings, during the missile attacks, and I can tell you about the atomic service because Slavutych is the city of atomic power plant technicians. What they were doing during the shellings, it was a surprise to all of the world. I mean, all of the expert sector, because when we've suspended the block during the shellings, I mean, the time it was taken, it was just so short, and then the reactors were relaunched. Well, everybody was pleasantly surprised because, I mean, all of the experts all around the world. Talking about Slavutych, we have our experience of a full blackout in the year 2022. Slavutych was left without power supply for 6 days. That was an active phase of the invasion. The aerial lines were destroyed and the power grid just did not extend to Slavutych. We were able to preserve water supply and heat supply in the city thanks to the existence of cogeneration plant back then. Now this cogeneration plant is being widely discussed because it's really something that saves the cities. It's something that saves communities, and we were viewing the cogeneration exclusively as a security aspect. We were getting cogeneration plants. Now the city of Slavutych is expected to have another cogeneration plant installed. We understand that cogeneration is not about resilience and security. Today we have to think about the economy. We have to think about how it may work. So one thing is when a cogeneration plant works in coupled with the boiler room, and we provide that heat to the residents. But whole different thing is when this heat is emitted during summertime. Should we supply it to the system? Should we suspend the generation? So this is where economy comes into play. So another thing is not about the generators, not only about the cogenerators. However, the big generators may be players in the balancing market. Solar power, again, that's yet another component of distributed generation. We're building 1.8 megawatt solar power plant with a megawatt battery is constructed to ensure the energy security, but we need the heat for the boiler in winter. However, we don't need it in summer. How can we supply it to the consumers in Slavutych? I don't know, and nobody knows. We are the city of energy technicians, but we don't understand how the market works, because it's honest. When we talk about the lack of specialists, to me it's more about the lawyers and the economists. For other communities, it's maybe more about the technicians. We understand the way the system works now, and there is the deficit of specialists everywhere. We've covered the big generation facilities with 100% booking, but when it comes to the municipalities, we don't have this booking. We're losing the specialists because they go to the front lines to defend our homeland. That's clear, that's reasonable. And when you have partners who can support you with their expertise during this period, you have to take advantage of it. Getting back to our generation, we're seeing that shortly we will have an excess of kilowatts in our local system. Yes, our aspiration is to become an island that covers Slavutych for 100% in case of an extreme situation. And I would like to make sure there would be no non-standard situation whatsoever. But during other periods, we have to understand where those kilowatts are going, not only because the donors have given you money and you've bought additional equipment and you install a solar power plant or you install another generation or cogeneration plant. You never invested in it. Yeah, I support Vitaly. The business immediately calculates, okay, what is the profit? Us as a communities, we think about our security, about our people, the way it may work in a critical situation. And at the next stage, there is a question: how can we become the parts of the process to the distributed generation? In the power grid, there was an important emphasis in the power grid, not like a standalone facility as an island. There are points of generation like sun, cogeneration, biothermal plants, gas power plants, but we don't understand how it will work with the market. Probably we need to install the storage facilities. I've seen such thing in Dresden. I've seen the accumulators of the thermal power. The power plants work in a unique manner. When the energy is the cheapest, they boil the water, they pump the heat into the big barrels, and when the electricity becomes more expensive, all that heat hits Dresden, not the small town of Slavutych, and they sell the excess to the grid. And then there is a 3 megawatt battery, which works as the computer. It buys and sells on itself. It sells during the peak hours when the electricity is the most expensive. Why cannot we do it? Ukraine can become one of the pilots of smart distributed generation. So the most important thing we need specialists in the smart networks. in the modern, up-to-date networks equipped with an AI that would regulate our grid to sell when it's profitable and to buy when it's the cheapest. And to do it, we need partners. Mr. Pavlo put it in proper terms. It's the top league. There's a very limited number of specialists who even know how to work in the market. We got an explanation from Obelenерgo about our solar power plants, how to be an active consumer or to work to the market. We got a small response. Due to the facilitated procedures, it's a very simple response. It's only 5 pages. It could be 30 pages before. We were looking at those 5 pages and we didn't realize what's going on there. So we need technical specialists, and we have them as the City of Energy Technicians, but we don't have specialists who are specializing in legal field or in economics. Because when we have partners, we understand we don't have to look for such specialists. Slavutych cannot provide them with the financial resources that they're worth of, because they cost a lot. Those are qualified specialists, and they're not so much in Ukraine. Not so much of them in Ukraine. That's why it's in our best interest. We're open to cooperation, and Mr. Pavlo put it properly that those are supposed to be the pilot projects. We have to go through them step by step to find all of the problems. We need to identify where to rectify the permission procedures, and the communities should become small islands that supply the electric power to the power grid of Ukraine, to the general power grid of Ukraine. Well, we understand that the point of view of security, nobody has any questions, but from economic perspective, did you do any calculations? Did you try to take a look at it? Is it really efficient when it starts working? Well, the most non-complicated calculations are for water channels when you install solar power plant over the water channel. You understand that there is an economic component in 1 cubic meter of water, which is sufficient, and here you understand that this is how your economy is going to work. When we talk about the distributed generation and electric power grid, it's difficult to calculate. This is where we need the specialists who may tell us how to do things properly, how to do things in an economically efficient way, when those kilowatts may be taken away from us, or they may put in storage, or when we should use them for our needs. And everybody understands that we don't have those kilowatts. That's the highest mathematics. The communities will definitely be unable to do it on themselves, and this is when we need to ask our partners to extend financial resources to support those processes, because it will be difficult for the communities to fund all those things. First of all, is the lack of money, then the areas which are of priority today, and it's difficult to find the balance there, to find priority among the consulting, calculation and stuff. This is where we will ask for the support of our problems. So Mr. Yurii, we understand that the commissioning process is the most difficult and probably the launching. So how long does it take? Well, let's talk about cogeneration. Those who were not ready to installation of the cogeneration plants, some were spending like more than a year after they were receiving the equipment. That's true. And very frequently the cost of commission was like 40% of the cost of equipment, and it looks like you're getting a big power plant, big generation plant, which is $50 to $60 million worth, and you need another 20 million to get it connected to the power grid. You have to get connected to the local grid, or if you don't want to sell it to the grid, or otherwise the cogeneration works off gas. You have to install the counter, and those who've already worked this space, they understand what I'm talking about. And there's another component. You have to do something with the generated heat. You have to get connected to that network, and there should be balance maintained there too. Slavutych has been working with the market of heat energy for a couple of years. We have different generations with different forms of ownership. For example, The Department of Education of Slavutych is holding a bid for procurement of heat, and there are participants who fight for the lowest tariff for us, so we could pick. And this is what we were aspiring to, and cogeneration will become another player in this market too. So when there is 20 megawatts of cogeneration funded by investors, it means that they will sell electric power to the grid 20 megawatts, or depending on the amount that the market may draw, and they will give another 20 megawatts to the heat supply grid. We'll see who buys it. It's an interesting process too. On top of that, it allows the local utility operator. Today, the tariff for transportation of gigacalorie is 1100 hryvnia. Everybody keeps transporting their heat, and they don't count how much the transportation costs. Today, Slavutych is getting 1100 hryvnia per 1 gigacalorie for transportation of heat from the private investor. So we should calculate it all when we talk about distributed generation and energy market. And here we need to have specialists involved. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ihor. I hope you're with us and you're ready to join our conversation. Well, good morning, dear colleagues. Greetings from the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Well, we're seeing this project from two perspectives, as one important for communities, for the state, and also important for our state enterprise, the energy company of Ukraine. And we're seeing the leadership role of our company here, which humbles us, and we would like to wish you that this project is implemented successfully and it yields economic results for territorial communities and for our state company. And obviously, from the energy security perspective, it's pleasant to see our energy company playing an important role in implementation of this project. It's also important for State Property Fund in terms of image, because it's a good thing, it's a good deed which provides more opportunities for our territorial communities and the economy of our country. Thank you very much. So greetings. Thank you very much for joining our conversation. So Mr. Roman, let's talk about funding. It's a trigger for everybody. I mean, funding of the distributed generation, it's coming from a number of sources from the state budget with the support of our international partners. We see the communities getting involved quite actively. Is it safe to say that it's possible to get the private businesses involved in this process? How can we do it? What is the motivation for the business? How can they see that it's attractive? Thank you very much. It's really an important thing. Mr. Svetelyk has mentioned that in the Ukraine facility platform we have a little bit different perspective, but it's an additional perspective actually. Because when we're saying that we need to build 11 gigawatts in Ukraine, there is no place for dispute here. Even if the dreams about the new reactors come true in 10 years, we need this power now. The fact that we're not getting power shutdowns doesn't mean that everything is fine, because we know that businesses are being shut down until this moment, and businesses pay a lot of money for import of electric power, which costs like 5 times more in Europe. So the question is how to use all of the sources in the most efficient manner to have both generation and cogeneration in Ukraine. The colleagues have mentioned that the construction of the new facilities takes time, at least half a year. It was proven by all of the analytical reports. And what we're discussing right now is important to make sure that the machinery that is already installed, that it's launched and starts working now. Some communities were getting transformers as a humanitarian aid that are still not connected. Some may have gotten the cogeneration equipment and they cannot connect those transformers and cogeneration plants. But we have to discuss things that we will need in 3 or 4 years. And one of the donors organizations once asked us how to properly build decentralized generation in one region. And we've said you cannot just buy the machinery, buy the equipment and install it. This is what they did eventually, because everybody wanted to help us like this winter already. But for the time being, the effect was minimal. If the project that we're discussing today will start operating, it will be way more efficient. So let's think a couple of steps ahead. I think that Mr. Yurii is a little bit too modest when he's saying that Slavutych is missing the people who can really sort this thing out. Well, Slavutych was always on, like, in the top notch. Well, we know that Slavutych was preparing this new technologies cushion, the biomass cushion. Slavutych has been doing it for years. I don't think that every single community will be as advanced as them, and even can be as advanced as them, because the communities are different in terms of energy saving. Energy saving is about paying less, and distributed generation is about having the generation plants installed around the city that can work both for the market, but may also help during power shutdowns or ensure the stable heat and electricity supply. The story with Vodokanal is very illustrative here, because up to 60% of infrastructure is Vodokanals, the water supply networks. And here we need to involve the private businesses. The colleagues were saying that the business may do it on their own, but they will do it on their own for themselves, because what they do now, what they construct now, is for their own consumption. But as a result, we're not going to have only distributed generation, but a chaotic generation that we cannot afford. And Mr. Svetelyk has mentioned it properly. We had a real good system. We had a system with a huge reserve from the point of view of networks, from the point of view of generation, and we need to build another one just like this for years ahead, because our neighbors are not going anywhere. And based on what we understand from our interaction with the communities, the partnership between the communities and private businesses may ensure the following steps. What is going to give? We'll have more players. We will have more players in the energy sector. There will be competition for electric power, and that will reflect in economy. The communities will know better what they know and what they need, because unlike Mr. Yurii, some of the mayors were saying we need gas piston stations to have them launched during the power shutdowns, thinking it's a huge generator, but that's a different logic. The stations around the communities may ensure uninterrupted power supply, which is also useful for the businesses, because if we see the number of technological parks registered in the Ministry of Economy, only 50% of them are connected to the power grid. That's the official data that they demonstrate. Involvement of private businesses will allow us to engage more specialists. CIGRE has a lot of specialists, but they are still not sufficient for the system that we're discussing. Again, there's a number of religious specialists in Ukraine who only believe in one technology and nothing else. Again, if we have our international partners engaged, we may open the way to the technologies that we've never had. First of all, it's a mix. When Mr. Yurii is saying wind energy, he's absolutely correct, because we may buy wind power plant, solar power plant, the battery, and they will all work together way more profitable for the market and for the grid. We may open the way for the biomass cogeneration plants. It works a lot in Europe, but in Ukraine there are only small numbers of them, but it's possible too. And I agree with my colleagues, it can all be clear for the communities when they understand what is the use on their part. The businesses may understand it as well, and after that we may come up with an answer to the question that many participants of the conferences were asking. Where are your projects? There are money for these projects. They are still with the international financial institutions that never changed their conditions due to the war. So they're asking, where are your projects? Because the businesses that we're discussing, from retail networks to gas station chains, those who want to join us, they don't know how to do it either. It's difficult for them. It's a complex thing, but if we gather all together and we disclose it to them, as to the communities, we're going to have a whole number of energy market players who raise international funding, who bring more technologies. They build alternative energy like biomass, wind, solar energy, and it's competitive. We don't want to build it in 5 years. We want to have as much different projects as possible to establish the competition among the financial models. What should we do for it? For the communities, for the private businesses, we have to finalize the reforms that we've promised, those that were clearly identified in Ukraine plan, because when we sell gas at 7 hryvnias cheaper than it really costs, as long as we have a lot of debt in the market, everything that we're discussing now will remain a good project, but we will continue looking for the solutions to more and more problems next winter. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and we will proceed to the signing of memorandum on cooperation that will include support of the communities and management of the new energy generating capacities. So let's proceed to the signing. Greetings, dear colleagues, on my behalf. And again, my signature will be there just as soon as I'm physically capable to put it. And again, greetings from the State Property Fund. I think that the most important thing that we've heard today is that we're all working on resilience, and this resilience during a war like this, a war that's been lasting for 11 years, is real important for us, and we hope that the next step will be a lot of projects, a lot of implemented projects, initiatives which will allow us to ensure such resilience for our power grid. And I want to thank all of you, everybody who's working on this resilience. And definitely I would like to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we can gather here and continue developing. Let's all work together for our victory, and glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.